Hello, I'm Faye.
And I'm Becky. In this podcast, we're going to be talking about maximising your potential as a leader and living your best life personally and professionally.
So join us on the M53 for our weekly chats, full of insights and inspiration, and of course, a cuppa and a butty.
Faye, it's called a brew.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Meet Me on the M53. I kind of want to say Happy New Year because we're recording this at the start of January, but I know that when it's actually aired, it will be a few weeks later, so it's probably too late to say that. But whatever you're doing, I hope you're having a good start to 2022 already. We're going to talk today about values. We're going to talk about what we feel about values and why we feel they might be important and how they can help you show up in your life and in your work, and how you can use values really to help you motivate yourself and set boundaries. Go on, Becky. You're gonna say something then.
I was, and then you looked like you were going to carry on. Yeah, I think for me, values is a really interesting subject, and I think it's one that doesn't necessarily get the credit that it deserves. I think people think values are kind of just one of those almost those corporate words that you throw around, you know, and they're words that don't really mean anything. And so it's really important to actually look then at well, do they mean something? And are we talking about organisational values or are we talking about personal values? And we will actually be talking about both today. So whether it's the values of your business, whether it's your own business or if it's the organisation that you work in, but also your personal values, because very often if there is some kind of discomfort or something that's not quite aligned, something that's not really working well for you, very often it can be that the values that you hold dear and the values of your organisation are out of line. They're out of sync, they're out of whack, they don't work together. But people don't realise that because people don't generally take the time to think about what their own values are.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. And just going back to what you said about what we think about values, that they might just be words quite often. And I know for me, I certainly did when I was in employment many years ago, you know, when I was quite new in my career and didn't really understand why we had to have these values, just thought it was a bit of fluff really. And it was always something, a bit of fluff, always something that was brought up on you know, our company away days. Let's revisit our values and talk about why they're important to us. And I never understood the importance of doing that exercise. And that's probably because I had never thought about my own personal values. And I probably, even though our values are there, they're within us, they are intrinsic to us as human beings, unless we consciously think about them, we run our life not thinking about them. So as you said, Becky, you know, when things don't feel aligned with you, it's probably that whatever you're dealing with is out of alignment with your own personal values. So I think there's a big importance on doing a little exercise to define what your values actually are, so that you know who you are. I think your values really reflect how you show up in life, in your relationships, in your family, in your business, in your career, in your work. Absolutely everything. They show how you show up, and they help you to understand what's important to you and why.
And that is essentially what we're talking about with values, isn't it? Because again, it can be one of those words, well, so what you actually mean about values? And it's basically about looking at those things that are important to you and they're important to you in your life and that you hold dear. And it's really worth noting, values change over time, right? So the values that I had when I was younger, I'll be honest, I don't think I even really thought about values before I entered the world of work, and there were suddenly the company's values plastered everywhere, and I'm thinking, oh, I really like those. They seem quite good. I can get on board with that. And then you start to do some like leadership and management training, don't you? And often one of the things that you do as part of that is looking at your values.
Mm.
And so I remember doing like a values exercise then. But when I've then revisited that, probably 10, 12, maybe even more years later, there's definitely a change in my values. So it's really important that you don't just think about this once and then hang your hat on it. These are my values and that's it. As you change, as you grow, as you develop as a person or as a business owner, then your values could change as well. So keep reassessing them.
Yeah, absolutely. Becky, I don't think I thought about my personal values until I worked with a business coach about 4 years ago. And
Wow.
and let's just remind everybody who's listening that I am in my 40s. So yes, I thought about organisational values.
Mm.
I am a very self-aware person. I do know how I show up and I know how I want to show up in the world, but I don't think I'd actually defined my values until I worked with a business coach and she said, "Oh, let's do this values exercise." And I did the values exercise. And I've got to be honest, probably when I was doing it, I would have been thinking, what am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Which is crazy. It feels crazy now, because I do understand the importance, and I did even then. But maybe I wasn't connecting the two, which is something I don't always connect the dots very well. But having my values, I do go back to my values. I have a number of values and I go back to them and I think, is this me? Is this still me? Yes, it is. And as you said, we do change those. So it's really important to reassess, think about who we are, where we're going in life, what we're doing. But I think there are always going to be some values that are foundational to us. They're sort of the bedrock as us as a human being and make us who we are. But then there are others that I believe will change. So yeah, I think a question that I would like to ask, and we are going to come on to, I am going to give you some questions to help you define your values if you have never done this exercise. Online, you can, if you Google values, you can find all sorts of lists of words that are values, and you can do exercises where you go through those words and sort of just highlight the ones that jump out to you. And not think about it too much, but highlight the words that jump out to you. But I've got some questions here that I will give you later on in the podcast, probably towards the end. Because I find going through that list of words, I kind of want to choose them all sometimes. There are some that I don't want to choose. I find it really hard. And then I get fed up. I get a bit bored of going through all the list of words. And then I wonder if I'm choosing words for the sake of choosing it to finish the exercise. So I've got 5 questions that I will give to you at the end of the podcast to help you define your values. And I think that this for me is a better way of doing it. Well, not better, but it's my way of, it helps me better. So yeah, but a question that I would like to pose to the podcast and to you, Becky, is: do you think we have values because we think we should? Or are they truly ours? And what I mean by that is, are our values that we hold dear to us, are they handed down from us through our family or through places that we've worked in the past, or are they truly ours?
That's a really good question, and I'm not sure that there's really a definitive answer to that. But I would say that probably when you first start to look at what your values are, I think you are really influenced by those values of others. So you start thinking about your family values and what your family held dear as you were growing up. And then, like you say, when you start to enter the world of work and suddenly your organisation has values and you adopt those as well. And it can be really difficult to separate, well, is this actually important to me as I am in the here and now? Or was it important to me when we were growing up and that was part of what made our, let's say, made our family function because we held this value really dear? So yeah, I think there is definitely an element of them being passed down. And so I would really encourage, you said don't think too much about it. If you do one of these exercises that you find online, and they are great exercises, by the way, because the words that come up on them are words that maybe you would never think about. And I think that's why an exercise like that, where you have all these words in front of you, can be so much more valuable than you just sitting there and thinking, well, what are my values? Because if you do that, you are much more likely, in my opinion, to take on those values of others, those values that you've come across before, those values that you maybe think that you should have. When you look through those lists of words, things may spring out to you that you think, do you know what? I would never even thought of that
Mm,
as being a value, but that is something that is really important to me. So yeah, I'm gonna have that on my list. It might not make my top 5 values, but maybe it's part of those 8, 10, 12 values that actually overall make me up as a person. Um so yeah, when you've got your list, have a look and think, is this list from me? Is this list from me in the here and now? Or has somebody else's voice influenced this list that I've drawn up?
mm. And I love that. It got me thinking about it. Doing these exercises for finding out your values really helps you to step into you as a person.
Yes.
And I like to think that I step into myself as a person, but I know that I'm influenced by others, because everybody is, right? But some people are influenced more than others, and doing this exercise will really help you step into you and be aware of who you are, who you need to be, who you want to be, how you want to take your life forward. And you might get some real aha moments from doing this exercise. I think for some people, this exercise could be life changing. I think for others, it could just be something that you do. But I think for some people, this could be life changing, for people that have not really ever thought about who they are and who they want to be before.
I
Very
think you're absolutely
powerful.
right, especially if people, I talked about that there may be sort of a lack of congruence between your own values and, say, business values. But if
Mm,
there is actually a disconnect between your values and then what you want out of
mm,
life, or the way that you are living your life, if you find that really could be life changing,
yeah,
because
yeah.
that could be where you look at those words on the paper and say, oh my goodness, no wonder I'm always feeling X,
Yes,
because
exactly. Yeah.
I'm not living in line with this thing that's actually really,
Yeah.
really important to me. And you may well have some real decisions to make
Mm,
as a result of that. Um, and that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to start to think about opening your mind, and opening up those possibilities that things could be, and maybe should be for you. The should for you, not the should for other people, but should for you and for your state of happiness, and for your personal success. That maybe things should change.
yeah. And an example of that, a small example, is one of my values is freedom. And I'm feeling at the moment like my wings are clipped. And
Mm.
and I know it's because of COVID, obviously. Um and whilst we have some freedoms, our life isn't how it was before. And I've really been thinking quite deeply during over the Christmas holiday about how I can live my value of freedom whilst we are still living in COVID conditions. I haven't really come to any answers um, that I feel are good enough, to be honest, at the moment. But it is something that I continue to. It's a question that I continue to ask, and even if I have to come to the conclusion of, I am free to go out for a walk. I am free to go places. I am free to do what I want to do, and that can be enough. But actually, this I do feel like my wings are clipped at the moment, and I want to explore that a little bit further. And that might be something that I explore with my own coach, but it is something that feels like it's going against my value of freedom at the moment.
I think that's a really common one for a lot of people
Yeah.
who have anything around freedom or spontaneity.
Yes.
I don't feel like we can. There's. I mean,
No.
I'm not the most spontaneous person in the world. Truth be told, I like a good plan. I'm a planner, but there are a lot of people who that spontaneity, socialization, and freedom are really, really important to them, and that they feel like they are, that they're a bit trapped. They've had their wings clipped, and they can't live their life in the way that they want.
Well, I'm going to tell you something now, and I'm going to be very open and honest here, is that I do like to be spontaneous. I much prefer to be spontaneous than to plan. And it does fit into my freedom value. My husband does not like to be spontaneous. He likes to know what's going on, and I know that I have dulled my spontaneousness. Is that a word? Spontaneous now.
Spontaneity, but
Oh, that's the one.
but we can go with spontaneousness.
I have dulled my spontaneity of my own. Clearly, my own decision. I haven't been asked to. Since we've been together, I've found myself not being as spontaneous as I spontaneousness. I've found myself not being that spontaneous since we've been together, which is an awful lot of years. It's over 20, so it's a long time. And it dawned on me during the Christmas break. It dawned on me as I was thinking about my freedom and feeling that like my wings are clipped at the moment. I realised that actually, since we had my son, I would say, I don't feel that I've been as spontaneous as I would like to be, and that is something that I am going to change. I'm not quite sure how yet, but that is something I'm going to change.
I was going to say, what was the conclusion then of having that realization? So something needs to change.
Something needs to change, and it might not be much. It might not be anything massive here. I'm not saying that I'm just going to get up one morning and say I'm off to travel the world. It's not going to be that massive, but it just might be. I don't know. I feel that because we can't be quite so spontaneous as we used to be, it is a lot more difficult, and probably that's the thing. But I do feel that something needs to change there, and I'm quite happy just to take the bull by the horns, and if my husband wants to come along with me, he can. If he doesn't, well, he's quite happy. I'm quite happy for him to do whatever he needs to do. That's fine.
Stick with his plan.
Stick with his own plan. That's okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about personal values. We've talked about quite a bit. What about business values and organizational values? I was reading a book, The Buddha and the Badass, by, I'm going to say his name wrong, and I hope I don't, by Vishen Lakhiani. I'm very sorry to Vishen if I've pronounced his surname wrong, because I don't like to do that. But he's the founder of Mind Valley, The Buddha and the Badass, and he talks in there about values, and he talks about if you are the founder of a business. The book is about organizational leadership, and if you are the founder of a business, to ensure that you've got your own personal values set before you start talking about organizational values, so that you know exactly how your business fits in with your personal values, where it needs to go. And if you've got lots of people working with you, to encourage them to do their personal values as well. And then to get together as a team to establish what the organizational values are. And it might be quite a hard conversation to have, because you might be bouncing around lots of different words and what have you, but that it's vital to do that so that everybody fits with the values, that the values are very fitting for who the people are in your organization. That leads me on to recruitment. Because when we recruit people in business, regardless of how large your business is, if you're small and you're looking to outsource, it's still the same. So when we're looking at recruitment, we're looking for people who can do what we need them to do. We're looking for somebody to do a job for us, and we're looking for somebody to do that job well. We're looking for somebody who can take hold of the reins and get on with it, because we need it done. What we should be looking for alongside that is the person that fits the business. the person whose values fit the business. Because actually we can teach the skills. There'll be a lot of teaching anyway with, well, actually we want it done like this. You might have the core skills, we might have to teach the way it's done here, kind of thing. And also learning from them, the skills that they bring. But skills can be taught and knowledge can be taught, but intrinsic values can't. You either are in alignment with an organisation's values or you're not. So when we get recruitment wrong, well, when I worked with recruitment and selection back in the early 2000s, the cost of getting recruitment wrong was pitched at something like between 3,500 and 4,000. It's going to be a lot more than that now, I suspect.
Well,
So
definitely.
the cost of getting recruitment wrong is huge. So looking at our recruitment processes and looking at what we need to do to bring, to ensure that we're recruiting the right people who are aligned with the values, we must ask ourselves that question, what would we prefer? Do we want someone who fits in with a whole company and can grow here and can develop their skills in alignment with who we are? Or do we just want someone to do that job and it doesn't matter if they fit in or not? I think it's a really important point to make. And that comes about, sorry, Becky, I know you're just about to jump in there. But it comes about because I was on a networking meeting last week with business owners, and we were talking about planning, and we were talking about what we needed for the year, to make sure that we could run our business, live our lives. And a guy on there was saying, well, he said, I know exactly, I've got my spreadsheet. He said, so I know exactly how much I need to bring in to live my life in the way that I want to. He said, so now, he said, it's very important to me that when I'm looking for businesses to work with, when businesses approach me and say, we'd like what you offer, he said, I ask them about their values. And he said, their values must fit in with what I do. He said, because I know how much I need to earn and I know how I can cover those costs. He said, so I want to know who the business is. Do I actually want to work with them? And I asked them a question, how do you demonstrate your values on a daily basis? Oh, what a corking question.
I love that.
How do you demonstrate your values on a daily basis?
On a daily basis.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. That is brilliant as well, because being on the, let's put you on the other side of the recruitment process. If you are someone who is going to work in a company, this is why, again, it's really important for you to think about your personal values to then understand whether or not your values then align with the company that you think you want to go and work for. And that question, how are they demonstrated on a daily basis? That'd be brilliant. I would love to hear from someone who has asked a company that and what the answer has been. Because I don't know about other people. I've certainly found myself in a situation where you with a company and you think, I really like those values, and at the start could definitely see how those values were played out and were lived through the business, and then after a while they just became words. Changes in leadership, changes in direction for the business, and those values just became words. And that really grated on me. I felt in my being, in my person, I felt the loss of those values, which really affected then how I wanted to work for the business.
Yes. Similarly, I work for an organisation where I really felt the values were strong and they were very aligned with me as a person, and probably shaped my values as well. We had a change in CEO. Oh my goodness. And leadership change, because the CEO that came in brought their own leaders with them. Wow, what a change. Their personal values were obviously very different, and they then exuded. They did demonstrate their values. Not sure what their values were. It wasn't a happy time, and they didn't fit. They were a round peg in a square peg in a round hole. Got it round, got it wrong. They were a square peg in a round hole, completely and utterly. They didn't. Fortunately, they didn't last very long. It was noticed, and it was all rectified, and we had a happy, harmonious place of work back. It did come back. but a lot of damage was done in that time.
Mm.
A lot of damage was done in that time.
I can imagine. I can.
Go on, Becky.
I was going to say, soon Faye will share her questions with us around once you've looked at a list, or questions to have in mind for while you are looking at these list of values words. But something I would really encourage you to do once you've found the words, just write a sentence or two to define what it is, because having a word on a page is one thing, but that word can have different meanings for you than it will to me, than it will to Faye, than it will to your next door neighbour. So what is it then about that word that makes it your value?
Yeah, that's a really good idea, because things mean different things to different people.
Absolutely, absolutely. So make it more than a word.
Yeah.
Make it real for you, because once you've made it real, that's how you're going to live it, or that's how you're going to see where you're living it already. So give it a definition. What is it about that word that is important? I'll give you an example. So one of my values is impact. Well, impact means different things to different people. My definition around impact is that I'm here to make a positive difference on the lives of others, and for myself, I want a positive impact as part of my own life. But one of my business values is impact, because I want to make a positive difference. So give it a sentence, give it a definition.
I like that. We do know what our values mean to us. We know what the words mean to us. But obviously, if you're trying to communicate that to others, be very clear about that. And do communicate your values to others. So here we go. Here's some questions that you can ask yourself to establish your personal values. And they're quite simple, okay? When do I feel at my happiest? Or when did I feel at my happiest? What was going on for me then? When did I feel most proud? What was going on for me then? When do I feel satisfied and fulfilled? What helps me to feel inspired and energized? And finally, what qualities do I look for in a friend? Now, they are simple questions, but they can really help you come up with, when I'm thinking about my friends, I want my friends to be fun. Fun is one of my values, fun and joy. Luckily, Becky's quite fun.
Not spontaneous, but it still can be quite fun.
But I want my friends to be fun, but I want them to be loyal. I want them to be honest. I don't like people who lie. So I want them to be honest, even if they have to tell me that maybe Faye, you're looking like you've eaten all the Ferrero Rocher at Christmas. It's okay. I'd rather that than them talk about me or think about me behind my back. So those questions. So when do I feel happiest? When do I feel proudest? When do I feel satisfied and fulfilled? What helps me feel inspired and energized? What qualities do you like in a friend? For example, what helps me feel inspired and energized? For me, it's ambition. It's about moving on. It's about developing myself and moving on. So ambition and passion is a value of mine, because ambition to grow and develop and have that passion about what I do and do what I really love, what brings me joy, and they're values as well of mine. So they're all interconnected. Yeah.
Love it. Thank you, Faye. Thank you for sharing those. And I hope that you find them useful. I really hope that you do. If you're a person who hasn't really spent much time thinking about your personal values, just take that time. You're looking at maybe half an hour, and the results of it could be really quite life-changing. Give it a go. Let us know. Let us know if you spend some time thinking about your own personal values.
Brilliant. Thanks, Becky.
Thank you for listening to Meet Me on the M53. If you'd like to know more, you can see Becky at questforest.co.uk and Faye at fayeblakey.com.
Don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss an episode, and thank you to Wahoo Media for our production. We'll see you next time on the M53.
Safe travels.